everyone. Welcome to another episode of Simply Susan, where we explore historical sewing, cooking, and living. And right now we are simply exploring a problem or a thought of what I'm going to do with this skirt. So we already discussed the Tengor princess skirt, TVE23 from Truly Victorian. And I cut the pattern out of this really nice soft fleece flannel. I am flustered because I'm trying to decide what's going to be the best course of action for this. So it's a flannel. I don't think it's like any kind of official tartan pattern of anything, but I think it is at least reminiscent of, similar to the pattern for the black watch, and that's what my fiance has a kilt of, so I thought that we could potentially look kind of cute together. But so I cut it out of this flannel, and I had really high hopes that I was going to have this like supremely soft and comfortable skirt that was also going to be nice and thick and full, but it just doesn't feel as thick and as luscious as I had hoped for. Now, with this pattern, you do a lining on the top of it, because I guess the top is a little bit of a corselet, it says. So it suggested like a thicker material, so I got a nice, just good old-fashioned canvas, because I figured and it gets boned at the top. So I figured that if I was doing that, I would want something that's going to hold up to that with the boning. But I just feel like the rest of this is going to be pretty limp and lame. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out the broadcloth, cut these panels of the skirt out of the broadcloth, and then come up with a plan whether I'm going to try to sew the broadcloth onto the canvas, and then I would just have the top lined with only the canvas and then the bottom lined with the plain broadcloth, or whether I'm just gonna go all in and have the top with 3 full layers with the canvas, the broadcloth, and the flannel. So let's cut another round of panels out of the broadcloth, and then sort of see how things feel when we try to put them together and line them up for where we think we need to go with how we're going to handle the lining situation. All right, let's get cutting.
All right, so I will spare you the painful footage of like 45 minutes of me just sitting at the sewing machine and struggling while reading the pattern about 35,000 times. So here's what I did to begin the construction of this skirt. I sewed the back center seam from the notch down to the bottom. The space from the notch to the top is where the placket and closure goes. Next, you take the placket, wrong sides together, zigzag around the edges. I did end up doing a zigzag around it, even though I intend to fell them properly. Now, I deviated from the instructions a little bit here. It wants me to put the hook and eye closures on now. I chose to do that as one of the last steps, and I also chose to use a clasp and bar situation for the actual closure. After I had the placket sewn together, I pressed open the seam allowance for the top part of the area where the placket would go, and then I sewed the placket on just like it describes in the instructions.
So I have this, and then
Place the placket under the left-hand side skirt opening. So we're doing it on the inside here. Flip the skirt fabric out of the way and seam together the placket to the skirt from opening to the beginning of the center back seam. Be very careful as you sew over the eyes, which we don't have to. Top stitch 1/4 of an inch from the edge to hold the placket in place. Sew a pointed line to the center back seam. So this seam allowance, that we pressed under, we're going to match that up, and we're going to try to sew sort of in that seam allowance, I believe. And it says to sew from the top down. So let's match that up. Throw a pin or two in. Then flip this inside, and we're going to top stitch this. Place the placket, match the seam allowances, flip the skirt opening, top stitch 1/4 of an inch from the edge to hold the placket in place. Got it? We are moving right along here. Okay, so we sewed the placket on, folded the placket so it was on the inside, and then we top stitched around the V in back where the placket will cover the opening and where we'll attach the hooks and eyes at the end when we are ready to do so. So here I am in utter deep thought and contemplation. There was another piece to the placket assembly and closure of the skirt, and for the life of me, I could not figure out where it went or what to do with it. However, it seems as though the clasp and bar and the placket in the back underneath were adequate, that it's fully closed in back, which you will be able to see whenever it's finished, how well it goes together. So basically, I kept reading about what I was supposed to do with this extra piece, and I couldn't figure out any good way to use it. So basically, I'm going to assume that I was actually able to assemble this skirt more efficiently than the pattern instructs us because I could have saved some fabric. Right, guys? Once I figured out the placket situation, the rest of the construction went pretty quickly. I flatlined the pieces just by layering them all together and then treating them as one piece, and proceeded to sew each skirt panel together in numerical order, and I did French seams on them, and you can check out my other video for a more detailed explanation of how I do French seams. This part is one that you also probably want to watch in warp speed so you can avoid watching me struggle with math. But basically what I did here was I took the canvas that I had and used that to make 3.5 inch wide bias tape. I used that for the hem facing and along the top edge of the skirt. So here's a few shots of the first fitting of this skirt. When I first put it on, I was not happy with how it fit, how it lined up, how the body of the skirt felt. So yeah, this is definitely to be continued. I hope you enjoyed the making of a 1906 princess skirt, and please join me for section 2. Thank you.